life of a spy isn't as glamorous as I thought. But it isn't dull.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder.
If you're new to the show, what we normally do is we start off with our thing of the week, which is something that the two of us have been, some form of media that we've been consuming over the past week. Then we get into a rundown of the weekly box office and then get into all of the topics. And this week, we're doing a little different. DB is going to start with his thing of the week.
Yeah, I figured I bullied you into going first too many times. So I actually saw a live musical performance last night with the heavy metal band Bandmade. So they're a Japanese group, so it was very special that they were doing a show in the U.S. at all. I'm actually supposed to see you with the same group of friends, another group called Scandal, but they got COVID at like a day before the show was going to happen. So that was unfortunate.
Yeah.
But basically what Bandmade does is they do heavy metal music while dressed as maids, hence the name.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of amusing how there's like two different flavors of maid. There's like goth maid and perky maid in the same group. If you were to guess who in the group here was the one that was interacting with the fans the most and also played the most shredding guitar, who would you guess?
I guess the one front and center.
You would be right, which kind of surprised me. Girl on the right here, by the way, I don't know any of their names. I would call myself a casual fan of the group. She's like the lead singer. So if you hear it singing, it sounds more adult, that's her. But if you hear like a higher pitched one, that's her. She was just like milking the audience every time the group needed a break. Thank you, Shiato. Just boy kyun, that type of thing. Like she ended all of her sentences with pon, which I think that is. I know that pon is like Japanese. PON is like Japanese slang for cute and clumsy. But I don't know if that's that or if that's a maid specific thing.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. She had like the most interaction. Lead singer was in second place with that. The drummer here did a couple of things. The bassist and the backup guitarist here were very much silent, and you could kind of forget they were there at times.
Yeah.
But it was a good show. My advice is that if you go to a live music performance like this and you haven't before, bring earplugs, because you'll hear everything fine anyway, except for some of the talking, and you will avoid hearing damage.
Yes. Yeah, that I haven't been to many live concerts in general, but yeah, that's something that I have noticed. Yeah.
Also, if it's a small theater, spring for the premium seats because we had to stand the whole time.
How long was the concert?
Well, it was scheduled to start 8. It really started around 8:20, 8:30. Not sure what the delay was. And then we got out of there at 10:30, so it was a while to be standing.
Yeah, or wear comfortable shoes either way.
Yes. But it was a fantastic show. If any of you want to see get a sense of what they're about, pun unintended, they had this song called "Sense" that was used for the really awful anime Platinum End last year. But the song itself is shredding.
Okay.
Like the main girl here, she was moving her finger so fast on the guitar that I actually started to wonder, okay, is she air guitaring right now? Like there's no way that's making notes, right?
Yeah.
But no, they're just really awesome. That song "Sense" actually got some attention last year, I want to say, because I kept getting videos recommended to me on YouTube that were like, girl plays impossible guitar riff. How did she do it? Bassist opinion or whatever,
Yeah.
that type of commentary thing.
Very cool.
So you did something entirely different.
Yes, I did. Yeah. So in the spirit of October and with Halloween season, I watched a classic horror movie, The Omen, starring the legendary Gregory Peck, and trying to remember, David Warner is also in it. Directed by Richard Donner. It's a little weird because he did this movie 2 years before he did Superman. So
I guess it makes enough sense because the James Gunn did all those bizarre trauma movies, then Disney still let him do a superhero movie.
That's true. Yeah. So not entirely unusual. But yeah. So I'm assuming probably most people have heard of this movie or they've seen it. If you hadn't, the kid that you see in the poster is Damien, who is the Antichrist, the son of Satan, and how it starts out is Gregory Peck's character. He and his wife, they lose their baby, and then they adopt a kid through this Catholic orphanage hospital thing.
And they couldn't recognize the Antichrist? Yeesh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they adopt Damien, and right when he turns 5, that's when the proverbial excrement hits the fan. People start dying around them, and they get a weird lady who becomes his governess, and she's obviously one of his minions, and he gets has a dog who's a familiar watching over him, and so Gregory Peck meets a Catholic priest who warns him about his son being the Antichrist, and he goes off on this little journey with David Warner's character, who's a photojournalist, and spoilers, it doesn't go well for them.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I haven't seen the sequels, so I can't comment on those. But of course, Damien it's a little weird with the sequels because like the second movie he's a teenager, and then the third movie he's an adult. He's played by Sam Neill, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, this movie's, I mean, it's it's a classic for a reason. It's, if you are from the Christian faith, like I am, you spot a lot of the Book of Revelation stuff that they use in the movie for all the different plot devices and stuff. Definitely would recommend it if you're not a real horror fan. There's enough for you to enjoy. My one gripe though is I think Gregory Peck was miscast. I think he because I think he's supposed to be playing a character who's quite a bit younger than he was when he made the movie. because because he's playing he's playing a diplomat who's and then at throughout the crux of the movie he's the U.S. ambassador to the UK, and he's got like high political aspirations. So you're thinking like a guy maybe early mid 40s, and I'm gonna guess that Gregory Peck was like in his late 50s when he made this movie. So that's my only, and I understand why Gregory Peck, why they cast him, because he's Gregory Peck. He's a
right.
He's
legendary actor.
Yeah, very well known, and he back then it was all about star power, and you see Gregory Peck in a movie,
Yeah, born 1916, so he might have been in his six.
Yeah, yes, he was born the same year as my grandfather. So so he would have been 59, 60 years old. Yeah, so, little old. But I mean it worked. I mean it's still a really good movie.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can't say I've seen this, but I might give it a watch sometime.
Yeah.
But speaking of horror movies that seem to be doing okay, time for a quick look at the box office.
Yes.
Frankly, it's not as interesting as it was over the summer. I mean, you still have Top Gun Maverick clinging to the top 10, but it's 805,000.
Yeah.
So it's like the money has been made mostly.
Yeah.
Bros actually added 6 theaters somehow.
That's interesting.
Despite has Bros been out for 5 weeks? That can't be possible.
No, it's only been out 2, I think.
Okay, that my number in parentheses is its rank last weekend. That's right. It didn't even. It was only number 5 in its first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's done a little over. I think almost 7 million total.
9 million.
9 million. Okay. Still well short of the So little quick aside with this. I heard from one person that says that the budget for this movie was around 22 million, and I'll be generous and say that the marketing costs were about 30 million. So
if you have to basically double that,
yeah, it has to make over $104 million just to break even.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
No.
And this, folks, is why if you're in Hollywood, you don't take you try to get gross points if you can. You really can't, because you have to be Tom Cruise basically to get that anymore.
Yeah.
But if you can manage it, you get a percentage of something instead of a percentage of profit.
Yeah.
Which they'll always find ways to screw you over on.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's insurance in case the movie just doesn't do well.
Yeah.
Other movies that have come out, Smile only had an 18% drop, so it's doing very well this Spooktober.
Yes.
50 million, the kind of numbers that things like The Woman King or whatever would love to have. Although Woman King still hanging in there-ish. It's just not going to make the 190 million that it needs to break even.
No. Yeah.
Also, Lyle Lyle Crocodile. Yeah, I have an infantile attachment to this to prelude something we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
It's I looked it up and its budget is 50 million, so it's probably also not going to do its thing. Though we don't seem to have a international box office yet, so maybe it could do some business out there.
Yeah.
But it's Sony, so they'll sell it to, at least I'm reasonably sure it's Sony.
Yes.
So they'll sell it to Netflix and probably break even there.
Mm-hmm.
And those types of kids movies, even if they aren't all that good or successful to start with, they have a lifespan.
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll get on a streaming service or the home video, and kids will watch it there. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Don't Worry, Darling, and Woman King still in the top 5, but it's a really anemic box office right now, man. It's kind of astounding how little is going on that people want to go see.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to. Never mind. But yeah, like Avatar pulling in. Don't put 2.8.
Yeah, rounding up.
Yeah.
It's adding theaters. So I think the reason that Bros got more theaters is because, well, what else are we going to put there?
Yeah. Well, I think the new not Hollywood, Halloween movie comes out tomorrow.
Mm.
I think,
So that'll probably be a shot in the arm. But they're also like, it's the only movie I can think of this year that's doing a simultaneous release on streaming.
Yeah, which that could hurt it. Well, although it's dropping on Peacock, so I don't know how many people
Yeah,
Peacock.
if you can stream it on if a show streams in the force and no one's around, does it actually stream?
Yeah.
The other big release was Amsterdam, which just kind of sounds like it's not gotten good reviews from everything I've heard. It's just kind of you took us, Christian Bale, you took a swing for an Oscar, and it's kind of sound like everybody was in a different movie.
Oh yeah.
Because Margot Robbie was basically playing the character she always plays, which is Harley Quinn.
Oh jeez.
From everything I've heard, and yeah, I seriously say that the idea that Margot Robbie is some sort of box office draw is just completely incorrect.
Yeah, she's okay. I'll be
Yeah,
honest. I mean,
she's fine, but just
yeah.
also it's a strange. It's an Oscar bait movie when the poster doesn't have anything to do with the movie, but it's just a long list of, hey, here's all the people we got.
Oh yeah. Mike Myers is in that movie?
Apparently, he's actually good in it. Like he isn't full Mike Myers.
Wow.
I'm more weirded out by Taylor Swift being there because I don't think of her as an actress.
Yeah, I think she's only been in like a couple of movies, but yeah, she's not. I don't like her in general. So.
Yeah. Well, let's shake that off.
Yeah, good one.
Thank you. I only stayed up late last night trying to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lyle Crocodile, $50 million budget according to Variety. So, yeah, it's probably another end of year bomb. And, let's be honest here. There's not a lot coming out, which actually weirdly hurts the system as a whole, while also helping a few movies. Like the analogy I've thought up is I watched this documentary years ago about how the wolves basically got wiped out of Yellowstone. And because the wolves were gone, the coyotes stepped up. Yeah, they started hunting in packs more, and they got a bit bigger. But they didn't have the same impact on the environment that the wolves did because they just weren't as good at it.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't kill elk as easily, and bears a lot of the time, like the grizzlies will rely on elk carcasses to supplement their diet, and it's just this whole thing. Oh, and also like the elk aren't as worried about coyotes, so they don't avoid areas where the coyotes are, so they eat. Like they continue to graze places where if the wolves show up, it disrupts them. And then they brought the wolves back in, and the coyote population halved in a year, I think. Because wolves are just better wolves. And I think that's my analogy there is that we kind of just need movies that are better at being movies.
Yes. Indeed.
Yep. Speaking of things that, yeah, I'm tired. So folks, basically today I spent the entire day editing, and I'm done with book 4's first pass. So it may get another pass, but that was like 74,000 words I read in one sitting. So if I'm slightly unenergetic, just know it's for the greater good.
Yes. We get more Magpie Wizard books.
Yes, indeed. All right. So Disney, they're raising their rates again. Hooray!
Uh,
As is their custom.
yes. Good thing I already renewed my annual pass.
Yeah, though it's like the weird. It's that fast pass thing that they're changing the money on that again.
Oh, lightning lane is what. Yeah.
That's it. Yes, they're having to. And the theory I've seen is that the theory I've seen is that they figure, well, we're in for an economic downturn, so let's pump as much money as we can out of people. And also, like, well, if we have more park, then we have room to have people at the park.
Yeah.
Then we can charge more, which is a reasonable theory. So supply and demand, but it doesn't make people happy.
No, yeah, and yeah, for somebody like me and people, that who go to the parks a lot, yeah, that's they don't like seeing or hearing that, that they're going to be, spending more money than they already are.
And what's funny is that just because of this year, we could have picked an article from various times over the course of the year, and the basic message wouldn't have changed much.
Yeah.
You can milk your audience for a bit, but eventually they're going to get unhappy with you and find other things to do with their money.
Yeah, yeah. Then well, I will say in Orlando and in California, there are other amusement parks besides Disney World.
For that matter, for a lot of the prices of a Disneyland thing, you could go to Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like see some real culture.
Yes.
Go to basically any country you like for at least some sort of trip.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's it's probably gonna. You probably might eat some better food.
Oh, absolutely.
Not to say that all the food at Disney World is bad, but like the counter service food is. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's basically designed to be made quick and cheap.
Yes.
I figured. It's been a long time since I've visited Disney World, but yeah.
Yeah, it's well, and that's the thing too. And of course, Disney's banking on the fact that once you're there at the park, they've got you. And
right. I think I've heard Clownfish TV talk about Disney blindness or Disney magic, where you're there and suddenly $5 for a Diet Coke sounds reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's if the movies aren't making the money exactly, then they kind of need this. But on the other hand, I'm kind of glad I'm not a Disney shareholder.
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
Because they're in the position of screwing up their customer relations while simultaneously pricing out a lot of people. And like there's this weird thing when you price people out completely is that it stops being aspirational. They start going, well, what else can I do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I remember Clownfish. Again, they're talking about how, like, I guess Chapek was saying that he doesn't want somebody like me going to Disney World. He wants the family. He wants the family of 4 from Denver that goes once every other year. Once every 3 years.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense from his perspective, because if you're a pass holder and you keep showing up all the time, you're not going to buy $100 or $1,000 worth of merch every time you're there.
True. Yeah. Yeah. And usually when I'm spending money on is food.
Right. And you're probably, since you go there fairly frequently, I would imagine that you're not necessarily doing a huge, like, you're not going too extravagant with it, right? You're probably picking some of the fast and cheap stuff, and then maybe having a nice dinner at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I mean, it's like, well, I live in driving distance, and I'm going to be back, and yeah.
Yep. Of course, at that point, I say, okay, if you hate the pass holder so much, why do you still have the pass? Sunset the program.
Yeah. Well, I think they're kind of trying to do that because they are limiting new pass holder sales.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Again, I can be slightly sympathetic because that you can only have so many people in the park. Like this picture we have here is pretty full. Imagine if twice as many people showed up that day.
That's actually a pretty light day, if I'm being honest.
Oh my!
I've seen it a lot more crowded than that. Yeah.
Oh my! There's like standing room only there.
Yeah.
So I think something has to be done. Of course, on the other hand, I see where they would like they kind of like that pass holder thing because it's like a subscription model where, well, we know that we make a certain amount of money off of these people, and maybe they show up once in the year, maybe they show up 20 times.
Yeah. It's I think it's depending on which pass you get. It's I think the one we have, it's like I think 8 visits to break even.
So this is where you know way more about this than I do. So so there are different tiers of pass.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Disney, no good right now.
Yeah, it's a problem. I see it from their perspective, but I also think that you're driving. You're basically it's like a good number of shooter games have. I think Halo Infinite has been accused of this, among a few others, have been accused of building the game for the pro players instead of making the game necessarily for the casual fans.
Yeah, that's which is I will say in that to skid talk a little. I kind of agree with a lot of game journalists that they probably should have difficulties levels, and like more games should probably do that. I mean, just for the sake of just for like what you were saying, like pro gamers can play at their level, and then people like me, for instance, I could play at a much more casual level, and I'm not pulling my hair out trying to beat a level.
It's man, as soon as you have people involved on the other side of the screen, it becomes difficult to figure out how to design the game.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, so I think we've exhausted this one.
Yes.
Let's talk about Alan Moore said a thing.
Yeah. Or as I call it, old man yells at cloud.
Yes. Infantile love for Batman and other superheroes can be precursor to fascism, comic legend Alan Moore warns. I said around 2000, to quote, I said around 2011, I thought it had serious and worrying implications that the future of millions of adults were queuing up to see Batman movies, because that type of infantilization, that urge towards simpler times, simpler realities, that can very often be a precursor to fascism. Hundreds of thousands of adults are lining up to see characters and situations that have been created to entertain the 12-year-old boys, and it was always boys, of 50 years ago. I didn't really think that superheroes were adult fare. I think this is a misunderstanding born of what happened in the 1980s, to which I must put my hand up as a considerable share of the blame, though it was not intentional. When things like The Watchmen were first appearing, there were an awful lot of headlines saying, comics have grown up. I tend to think that no, comics haven't grown up. There were few titles that were more adult than people were used to, but the majority of titles were pretty much the same as they'd ever been. It wasn't comics growing up. I think it was more comics meeting the emotional age of the audience coming from the other way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's unpack all of that.
Yeah.
So, kind of, I've heard this argument too, in a way, when it comes to video games, where video games for a while were meant for kids. And then a company called Sega came along and started making games for teens, and then adults started playing them. And so now you've got kids and adults who play video games, and people are upset about that. It's kind of the same thing here, where you've got, where comics were, by and large, they were meant for kids, specifically boys, and then they started to. I would say they started to evolve and for more adults and more mature audiences, more mature readers, and I think a lot of that is because people, when they were kids, they read comic books, they enjoy the medium, they enjoy the stories, and they wanted to keep reading them, and and that's not. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
Right. I mean, how to put this? Okay, so Alan, what would you want people to watch? Is there a big difference? Like, let's take the Nolan Batman movies. The Nolan Batman movies you could almost describe as a police procedural with a guy who happens to wear a bat suit. The Batman, that's a pretty grounded movie, aside from a few silly elements, or arguably silly elements, like why is he wearing a bat suit and things like that.
Yeah.
But do you not want to have portrayals of heroism in media at all?
Well, I think he would probably want you watching. He would want people watching something like I'm trying to think of an example, like some sort of period drama, I guess.
Yeah, it's just, and it's weird for somebody who loved comics and wrote some of what people say are the greatest comics of all time to then turn around like you weren't 12 when you conceived of these stories. Yeah. I would almost argue that the problem with American comics is that they don't really make comic books for 12-year-olds anymore.
No, they make them for 20-somethings who are very politically active
and write slash fic.
Yes.
While also while also hating the audience that mostly buys the stuff.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there. Like I could kind of see his case if okay, let's talk about another thing. You hear about people talk about superheroes being fascist. It depends. I mean, Punisher, I can see that case. He's very much about he goes out there, he's judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, and people will say Batman is fascist, but I mean Batman, the guy is a billionaire, and his Bruce Wayne persona, he's pretty generous with his money.
That is the funny thing, that everybody always talks like Batman doesn't do anything charitable. Like, Batman would do so much more good if he was giving money to the poor and sick. Like, okay, do we need to just have a comic book like called Batman Tales of Philanthropy, where it's just all of the charities he does, so people can stop complaining and saying it's canon?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would just say that Alan Moore does this periodically, where he just goes out there and disses the industry that paid his bills all the years, and I don't know. There's always something that feels kind of off about it. But since I do kind of see him, like, and he even talked about where he owes a certain amount of blame for certain aspects of superhero comics, quote unquote, growing up. I do blame him for a lot of the problems or indirectly blame him for a lot of the problems we've had in American comics over the years.
Yeah, he kind of started the whole deconstruction movement in comic books, which has gotten very old, in my opinion.
Yes, basically, Alan Moore is not the problem. everybody like Tom King who thinks they can be Alan Moore is the problem.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and it is funny too to see Alan Moore basically biting the hand that had been feeding him for the last 40 years.
Well, and for that matter, what else could you possibly? Like, that's where the vast majority of his money came from. He probably got a payoff for V for Vendetta and Watchmen, but I would love to know what effects these periodic hit pieces that he does have on back order catalog sales of Watchmen. Do people remember that he exists and buy it, or do they dip a little bit until they forget that he kind of insulted everybody who likes the genre and medium?
Yeah, yeah, that would be an interesting thing to look at.
The other thing is just that he tries to tie it to politics. It's like, so you know who I wouldn't ask to talk with me about, let's say weather patterns?
Who's that?
I wouldn't ask a medical doctor.
Yeah.
If I need some plumbing done, I'm not going to go down to the auto mechanic, because people tend to be specialized and have a talent or a gift in certain areas.
Yes.
Most other things, it's them just absorbing the opinion of their peer group.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the guy who took the election of Margaret Thatcher in the 80s and made V for Vendetta out of it. Now, the last I checked, the UK had some issues, but an actual fascist Thatcherite government was not one of them.
No, yeah, no, that did not happen. If anything, she pulled that country out of a downward spiral. Like she pretty much saved that country.
Yep. But in the right circles, that opinion was pretty much just de rigueur. It's like, it's just what you say and think because you're of a particular class.
Right. Yeah. And and to be on and to be fair, or Alan Moore is a little out there.
Yes. Worships a pagan snake, though. I think I've heard people consider that. Is he actually sincere about this, or does he just do it to get attention?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I say old man yells at cloud, because he's just like, he's kind of just, I mean, who's he think is he's gonna whose mind does he think he's gonna change by saying stuff like this?
That's another one of those things where it's like, there's going to be a class of people who nod and say, yes, I don't let my little Jimmy read those comic books. Very seduction of the innocent style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I think, but here's, the thing with, it's okay for an adult to like comic books, and it's okay for adults to go see superhero movies. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Now, it might be a problem that we have too many superhero movies in a given year.
Yeah, that is true. Obviously that's there's definitely a quantity over quality issue going on right now.
Man, Phase 4.
Yeah. There's a reason people are calling it Phase 4.
Yeah, and they're trying to rush out of it as fast as they can because Phase 4 has become kind of marketing poison for them.
Yes, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where I very rarely find any interest in anything that Alan Moore has to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because he always says basically this.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, man, you hate comics, and people who like comics, I guess we'll just have to agree to have nothing to do with each other. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll always have his Swamp Thing.
Yep. Now, speaking of things we may not have much longer,
Yeah.
so we're kind of pivoting into some more grab bag Warner Brothers Discovery news.
Yes.
Because as Zaslav continues to use his meat cleaver to on the different branches of his new empire.
Yeah. Yes. More and more people seem to be heading for unemployment.
Yes. So anyways, Warner Brothers Discovery layoff hits Cartoon Network, Adult Swim marketing execs. So to go through it a little bit, I mean, okay, so marketing execs actually make quite a bit of sense to trim because they have people from Discovery who can do that type of job.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the benefit of doing the merger in the first place is that it's easier to sell ads if you have a bigger platform. Because yes, one thing if I say, oh, you want to buy some ads for, I don't know, the Learning Channel and I guess Discovery Channel.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier than if you have the two channels separate. So it's a similar idea here. If you can bundle in marketing and break down the market the way that they have, which I'm sorry, more uh, uh, things like the Property Brothers are more of a female audience thing, and things like, I don't know, that Penguin spinoff of the Batman that they're working on is going to be more of a male appealing thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can market it appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say I was too surprised when I saw this because, it's just, and also it's just going to be the nature of the game when you're doing a big purchase like this, and it takes time to figure out, okay, who's actually doing things that are valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Who can handle the work that somebody else is currently doing? What can we shift around?
Hey, Kit. But yeah, it's and of course, with marketing, especially with with a lot of these companies, most of the marketing tends to be a little on the woke side. So
yeah, well, I don't know if this is more how we market or more who wants to buy ad space on Cartoon Network.
oh yeah.
And the answer is maybe not many people because I think I saw a statistic that something like what 25 is like a 80% drop for the various kid-oriented cable channels in the last 5 years, something crazy like that.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah,
eh,
that's not surprising.
Right? I mean, let's take the word woke out of our mouths for a second here.
Okay.
Uh, the biggest problem with things like Steven Universe and all the other stuff that kind of spun off trying to imitate Adventure Time, they don't sell merch. Kids don't want an action figure of Steven.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and going all the way back to like 2011, the Thundercats reboot that they did. They The reason that show only lasted a year, despite the fact it was a pretty good show. They canceled it because the toys weren't selling.
Yep. And you could argue all day, was that a self-inflicted wound? Was that, what was that? The toys weren't good? Was it just that Thundercats was a thing that had a moment, and any attempts to bring it back are kind of doomed to failure, like Thundercats Roar? No matter how good you do it, or no matter how good a job you do of it, I don't know. If you put a gun to my head and said, DB, you have to uh, watch an entire 80s kids cartoon start to finish over the course of a month, I would probably choose Thundercats.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's like, I remember it having the highest quality, but I would also probably watch it and go, oh, this is kind of okay.
Yeah, it's and Yeah, that tends to be kind of the thing with a lot of the cartoon shows from the '80s because you know they were they were half-hour commercials to sell toys.
Yep. Just
Yeah,
with the Thundercats, I think it had the most thought put into it from a storytelling perspective.
that's true. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not silly in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
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 It also benefited from being towards the tail end of the '80s because, yeah, because as like He-Man was good enough for the early '80s. By the late '80s, not so much anymore
Hmm.
because the standards people were expecting had gone up because you had things like Transformers and GI Joe were animated in Japan, and they actually put good animators on them.
Yes. Yeah. Which I can't say the same for the cartoon shows today, especially with Western animation. It's just
Yeah, no, it's
yeah.
it. I as a little preview for next week. My next week's thing of the week is gonna be something I would recommend very highly, but you have to tolerate bad animation, which is a
Mm,
shame.
yeah.
Now, in the course of the cutting, we actually have a rare reversal of decision here.
Yes.
On Monday, there were a bunch of YouTube videos about the de-wokening of Warner Brothers or whatever they were saying.
Right.
Yeah, and so that there was an interesting program. There was a directors workshop and writers workshop programs that were designed to find young talent, which kind of
Mhm.
turned into, from the sounds of it, kind of diversity programs, and they decided it wasn't
Mhm.
making money. And then they tried to cancel it, and people weren't happy about it. So they said, "Fine, we'll just put it directly under the diversity, equity, and inclusion division."
Yeah.
I'd love to know what the budget was before and after, though.
They might be saving a little bit of money.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, this is part of the ongoing attempts to tweak Warner Brother Discovery's business model because, you know, the it's a question of, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. I
Hmm.
can't think of, that they're basically, this is just making Oscar bait and things like that.
Yeah. It's yeah. They're hiring. It's to hire people for diversity's sake, and just having them make stuff. Work on different things, and and we all know how that's going to go, which kind of leads into the next thing we're going to talk about. But yeah, it's I think pretty much every like I think every studio these days has something like this that they do.
Right? Like the old Fox Searchlight, and
Hmm.
it's not like necessarily a bad thing to have a program like this. I think that the problem is that if you, how to put it, if you go and try to find the best young people, like young up and coming people, on the basis of them being the best, you'll typically get a diverse set of people.
Hmm.
If you do like if you do blind casting, as so to speak, especially for writing, it would be very easy to just take all that out because you're
Yeah.
just looking at writing samples in theory.
Hmm.
But as soon as you turn it into a specifically a diversity program, it kind of loses some of its. It kind of changes the point of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It becomes something else that yeah, you lose the original intent.
Yep. Which, again, not to say that there shouldn't be. I'm sure that these people are fine people and creators. It's just, again, I have a feeling that it goes from like a talent scouting program to be more of a resource sink.
Yeah.
Which, the sign that they wanted, the sign that it's a resource sink that isn't necessarily returning a lot of money, the fact that they wanted to cancel it to start with.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's one thing that it's just like, okay, we'll let you in the door regardless of who and what you are, but you stay on your merit. I think is
Yep.
I think that's the intent, and whether but like you were saying, it rarely ever turns out that way.
Yep. Just because that's not what people in the industry seem to want.
Right.
Speaking of things people in the industry seem to want, I guess we'll talk about Velma.
Velma, yes.
So,
Yeah.
so there are two different Velma things that have been making the rounds. Um, there are two distinct Velma things. One was some sort of special where she geeked out and was having a strong attraction to a woman who showed up? Question mark. Uh, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, the some creator or voice actress talk about how they wanted to make her gay in Mysteries Inc. and weren't allowed to, but quote, if you read between the lines, you could see. Which I watched a bit of that, and I know that a big chunk of that was her trying to put the moves on Shaggy and her ultimately being irritated that he preferred to hang out with his dog rather than have a girlfriend. Your diversity inclusion there might actually be Shaggy being asexual, but that's
well, no, I won't say it. I won't,
yes,
I won't go there.
yes, but it's like I find that utterly uninteresting, just because it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like oh, what's that? Another character being uh it's funny. It's like you don't want people to go with stereotypes, but the arguments people would make for her being gay in the first place would be very often, well, look at that haircut, look at the way she dresses.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
hey,
wait,
D Rhino.
like, hey, do we want stereotypes or do we not want stereotypes? Because
Yeah.
I don't know what the rules are anymore, man.
Yeah, I don't
I, I,
either.
I'm tired, but
Yeah.
you know who else is tired? The LGBTQ community of being baited to watch things by being told it will be for them and then it's not for them. So hooray! Nobody's happy about the Mindy Kaling Velma show.
Yeah. Well, we were talking before the show, and it kind of seems like she has turned Velma into a self-insert character.
Yes, much the who is the other? Much the same way that and it's this weird like fanfictionification of different TV shows and media.
Mm-hmm.
In the comics, I can't remember the name of the creator now, but in some comic book that was based on the Harley Quinn TV show, they had their version of Vixen, and the creator, who is a former sex worker, bisexual, disabled black woman, just happened to give Vixen a girlfriend who had all of those traits. And moreover, Vixen was saying rather dehumanizing things that I would not want anybody to say to any woman in my life that I care about, but this was seen to be flirting.
Yeah. Yeah, and D Rhino, yeah, the Shaggy is literally a black weed guy now. Yep, we're peak
Yeah.
stereotyping.
Yeah, this almost feels like so basically a producer of various Scooby-Doo projects also confirmed Velma is gay and not even said not bisexual, which
Okay.
which seems to be incorrect because Velma has a crush on Fred in the new show. Also, Daphne is Asian and has two moms.
Mhm.
Like, at a certain point, just make your own TV show. It would be in the proud tradition of Hanna-Barbera characters and creations to just make a rip-off Scooby-Doo with an entirely different cast of characters and a different talking thing. Speed Buggy, Jabberjaw,
Yeah.
Captain Caveman. You could absolutely make a new knockoff Scooby-Doo and have some fun with it. I don't know. You could have a Funky Phantom. There's one you could remake and race bend and no one would care. Like Funky Phantom, have some fun with that.
Yeah.
You could even, if you wanted to go there with the politics, Funky Phantom being from the 1700s. might have problem adjusting to certain things.
Yeah.
You could have a lot of fun with that if you want
Yeah.
to do an adult show.
Yes.
Of course, the problem is that nobody gives an F about Funky Phantom. Let's be honest here.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, people give a partial crap about Scooby Doo.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Like, I don't really. So here's my level of caring about the Scooby Doo franchise. I have fond childhood memories of watching it. I especially like that one Cartoon Network show where they decided, you know what, let's actually give them a real monster to fight this time on that, was it Zombie Island, Pirate Island?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like that. That was a good show. They upped the animation budget and did some cool things with that. Had cat girls in it for some reason, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because like the people who would put the curse on the island were like werecats. It's been 20 years since I've seen it, so.
Yeah.
Well, kid, it happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Eventually, things that you grew up with are ancient references that nobody remembers.
Yes.
But we'll get to your shameless self-promo in a sec, Rhino.
Oh, yeah.
Let's finish. But a friend of mine tried to get me to watch Scooby-Doo Mysteries Inc. Scooby-Doo Mysteries Inc. is basically them taking a real stab at trying to make a real TV show. Like, by which I mean, like, they had a bigger plot, a big mega mystery. There was a group of teenage mystery solvers who had been in the city before, and they had vanished except for like their mascot was a talking parrot, I think, as I recall. And that's the show where you had the plot line with Velma trying to, seduce Shaggy, basically. The very one where they said, no, clearly gay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I could not get into that show. I tried. He showed me a few episodes. I thought they were irritating. I remember getting kind of bent out of shape that they did an episode where all those other knockoff mascots appeared, and it turned out that one of them was the villain and had created the other ones as like a mental projection or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's kind of a shame that you used them that way.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like I watched the reruns of the old show, like you, and I had some fond memories of it. But beyond that, I never really, I'm not really invested in Scooby-Doo or the franchise as a whole.
The only thing I know is I find Velma cuter than Daphne, and stop going for all the characters I have mild crushes on. Darn it! You did it to Tracer with Overwatch.
Yeah. Jinkies.
But again, I think the bigger scandal here is that they just let Mindy Kaling come in and remake the character in her own image.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with Mindy voicing the character. But have the characters be the characters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of Mindy Kaling. She was my least favorite character on The Office.
I never really watched The Office, so I couldn't even comment on that.
Yeah, well, she was just incredibly, probably the most like narcissistic character, and not in a and I don't mean that in a good way. Like, she just wasn't funny.
Yeah. When I saw this image going around of the black Shaggy, I thought that people were memeing on the fact that this had been done to Velma.
Yeah.
And like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. No one would do that.
They did.
Yes. So it's I support Zaslav in his attempts to reform Warner Brothers Discovery, because we can have fewer things like this.
Yes.
Again, like, I would say that the thing going forward, make a new franchise. Again, like, have even talking about things like Funky Phantom, that's like a half serious suggestion because they'd go weird places with the politics of it.
Yeah.
But come up with another animal, like make a talking cheetah and name him Charlie, and give him a group of teenagers, and he goes around the Southland, and you can have Mindy Kaling be a South Asian one, and have a black one, and have an Asian one with two moms, and I would have no problem whatsoever. I also probably wouldn't watch it unless I heard good things about it. But
yeah, same here.
With writing and an exercise program I'm on and other things, having some sort of life, I actually don't have all that much time for TV shows. So I actually very much appreciate when people tell me about good things.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, it's rare. Yeah.
Speaking of things we can shill, D Rhino, would you care to DM me a link?
Yes. Gods and Goddesses, and he also does some artwork too, husbandos and waifus.
Yes. If you want to get me, if you want to get us a link, is it currently up on Amazon, D?
Yeah. I'm
or is it anywhere where it can be purchased or read right now? Because we can put a link up somewhere.
Yeah. Are you looking? Gods and let's see. Okay, he's not yet, but he's raising awareness of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're happy to help promote it. As soon as you do have a place, let us know, and we'll put a link to it.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's all the show we have for tonight. Thank you everybody for coming out to watch us. We appreciate it as always. Hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell for notifications, and we will see you all next week. Good night.
Yep. Good night, everyone. Thanks for.
The life of a spy isn't as glamorous as I thought. But it isn't dull.